I never liked the river much, not even when I was a kid. Something about it always felt off. The way the water moved, slow but restless, like it was thinking. Watching. Waiting. My Uncle Henry owned a little bait shop out by the banks, rotting wood walls, metal roof rusted through in patches, and the faint stink of fish guts that never really left your nose. Every summer, he'd hire one of us nephews to help out, under the excuse of teaching us the value of work. What it really meant was early mornings, mosquito bites, and scraping dried blood off the floor in the back room. That summer, God, I still wish I'd just said no. I was 17. My older cousin Brandon had worked there the year before but refused to talk about it afterward. Said something about a drifter camping out past the bend. Just don't go walking too far upriver, he warned me when I took the job. Especially not at night. Some things out there aren't fishing for trout. He tried to play it off as a joke, but his eyes said otherwise. First couple weeks were boring. Early shifts, hauling buckets, listening to the old radio hiss static between country songs. Uncle Henry didn't talk much. He smoked like a chimney and watched the water the way a man watches a loaded gun, aware it could go off at any second. But then people started going missing. The sheriff came by one morning, real casual, like he was just checking in. Asked Henry if he'd seen a hiker, a woman named Sarah something. Came through the area a few days before, said she'd planned to camp near the river. Henry didn't even look at him. Just grunted. River swallows what it wants. And kept gutting a carp. The sheriff stared at him for a moment too long before giving me a nod and heading back out. When I asked Henry what he meant, he just shook his head and said, "Mind the bait. That's your job." But that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Brandon had said, and that weird look in the sheriff's eyes. So I did something stupid. I took a flashlight and walked up the river. I told myself I was just curious. Maybe I'd find some clue, or maybe just get proof there was nothing to worry about. That it was all just backwoods paranoia. But the deeper I went, the quieter the world got. No frogs. No insects. Not even the river seemed to make noise anymore. Just silence. Heavy and wrong. And then I found the bones. They were clean. Too clean. Piled up under a thick oak tree, like someone had been sorting them. Skull on top. A woman's, maybe. Jaw cracked down the middle. Bits of fabric hanging from a nearby branch, flapping in the breeze like forgotten prayer flags. I didn't hear him behind me. Not at first. But I smelled him. A thick, wet stink, meat gone sour, mixed with smoke and iron. My stomach turned before I even turned around. That's when I saw him. Naked except for a hide made of sewn-together skin, stretched tight over his back like a cape. His eyes were pale, milk-glazed. But he saw me. And smiled. I couldn't move. I wanted to. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to run, but it was like my legs forgot how to work. He stood there in the shadows, maybe 10 feet from me, head cocked slightly to the side like a curious dog. That awful cape of skin, stitched in patches, some pale, some dark, all stretched and dried, clung to him like it had grown there. His chest rose and fell in these slow, deep breaths. Calm. Like he had all the time in the world. Then he took a step toward me. The bone necklace around his neck rattled gently, teeth clicking against each other. I snapped out of it. Just turned and bolted, branches whipping against my arms, mud sucking at my boots. I didn't care about the flashlight. I dropped it somewhere in the panic. I just ran, not even looking back, lungs burning, heart thudding so hard I thought it might burst. The only thing louder than the sound of my own footsteps was his laughter. It was low and guttural, but human. Almost. Like someone trying to remember how to sound like a person. When I finally stumbled back into the bait shop, I slammed the door and locked it behind me. Collapsed against it, chest heaving, body trembling like I'd been electrocuted. Uncle Henry didn't even look surprised. He was sitting at the table, a half-empty glass of something brown in front of him, cigarette burning low in his hand. "He's still out there, huh?" he said. I just nodded, too winded to speak. Henry sighed and stood up, joints cracking like old wood. Guess he's hungry again. That sentence hit me harder than anything I'd seen out there. Again? I asked him, yelled honestly, what the hell was going on? Who that was? What he meant by again. He didn't answer right away. Just poured himself another drink, stared out the window into the dark. You ever hear the old stories? He said finally. About the Wendigo? I rolled my eyes. That was not some legend, Uncle. That was a man. A man wearing skin. Henry smiled, but there was no humor in it. Sometimes the stories are just the truth, passed down crooked. He sat back down, stared into his glass like he might find answers there. Back in the 60s, he said, there was a man lived up near the ridge. Real quiet, kept to himself. People said he was strange, but mostly just left him alone. Then folks started going missing. Hunters. Campers. Never more than 1 or 2 a year. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. The kind that's grown roots. They found his cabin. Eventually. Or what was left of it. But they never found him. He tapped the glass with one dirty fingernail. And now, he's something else. Something the river keeps. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't even try. Just sat with a baseball bat across my lap, watching the windows. Listening. Because somewhere out there, beyond the trees, I could still hear him. Breathing. By the time the sun started creeping up over the trees, painting the river in dull orange light, I decided I was leaving. Screw the money. Screw the job. Whatever Uncle Henry thought he was doing out here, I wanted no part of it. When I told him, he just nodded like he'd expected it. I don't blame you, he said. But he'll come for you anyway. That stopped me cold. I asked him what the hell he meant. I hadn't done anything. I didn't take anything. I wasn't even supposed to be there. Henry took a long drag from his cigarette and looked at me like I was a scared kid again. You saw him, he said. That's enough. Apparently that's the way it works out here. You see him, and you don't just walk away. The river marks you. Not with anything you can see. Not a brand or a bite. It's quieter than that. More patient. You'll start hearing him, Henry said. Even when you're miles away. Smelling things that ain't there. Dreams, too, bad ones. And the worst part? No one will believe a word you say. I didn't argue. I just packed my stuff. As I was loading my duffel into the truck, Henry came out and handed me a small metal tin. It was rusted shut, almost fell apart in my hands. Keep this with you, he said. Don't open it. Not unless you have to. I asked what was inside. A piece, he said, of the first one. Then he turned and went back inside, like the conversation was over. I stood there for a minute, holding that tin, wondering what the hell he meant by the first one. Wondering what kind of man collects pieces of monsters. I left anyway. Drove 6 hours back to my apartment, didn't stop once. By the time I got home, I was convincing myself I'd overreacted. That maybe it had been some lunatic in the woods, some deranged survivalist living off-grid. It happens. It's not supernatural, it's just awful. I could live with that. That night I slept like a rock. The next night, I woke up at 3:12 a.m. The room was ice cold. My breath came out in clouds. I thought maybe the power went out, but the clock was still glowing. The heater hadn't shut off. Then I noticed the smell. Same one from the woods. Rotting meat and old smoke. Faint but real. I checked every room. Closet. Under the bed. Nothing. Doors locked. Windows shut. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been there, and maybe still was. That's when I saw the footprints. Bare. Muddy. Leading from the foot of my bed to the hallway. And then just gone. I didn't sleep again. Not that night, and not the one after. And on the third night, I heard the voice. Low. Gurgling. like a throat full of water. You saw me. I didn't tell anyone. Not at first. What would I say? Hey, I saw a man made of skin in the woods and now I think he's stalking me through my apartment. Yeah. That'd go over great. But I started writing things down. Times. Smells. Sounds. I had this growing sense that if I didn't document it, if I didn't prove it, even just to myself, it would get inside me somehow. Twist things. By the fifth night, I was barely sleeping. Every time I drifted off, I'd wake up choking on river water. Gasping. My sheets soaked. Sometimes with sweat. Sometimes I wasn't sure it was sweat. That smell never really left. I started burning incense just to function. People at work commented on how I looked pale, sunken eyes twitchy. Like I was detoxing from something. Maybe I was. I finally broke down and called Uncle Henry. I told him everything, the footprints, the voice, the dreams. He didn't sound surprised. But his voice was thinner than usual. Shaky. I was hoping maybe you'd get lucky, he said. Sometimes it skips. Skips what? There was a long pause. Generations. Then I heard a sound in the background, something heavy crashing to the floor. A scraping noise. Followed by nothing. Uncle? No response. Uncle Henry, are you there? Still nothing. The line didn't disconnect, but I could only hear this low, rhythmic breathing. And then, just before I hung up, I heard him whisper something I couldn't quite make out. I played it back about 50 times. Boosted the volume. Put on headphones. Eventually, I caught it. Don't let him in the water. That was the last time I ever heard his voice. The next morning, I got a call from the local police. They found Henry's bait shop burned to the ground. Said they suspected an accident, faulty wiring. No body recovered. Just teeth. A handful of human teeth. Arranged in a circle in the middle of the floor. That tin he gave me? I hadn't opened it. Still haven't. But I took it out of the drawer and carried it with me everywhere after that. Slept with it on my chest. Like it was the only thing keeping me anchored to reality. And that night, I realized the voice wasn't just in my head anymore. It was inside the walls. At first, I thought maybe it was just the pipes. The old building I lived in creaked and groaned when the weather shifted, and the plumbing always made strange sounds. But this was different. This was wet. Not just gurgling, but sloshing. Like something was moving behind the drywall. Crawling. And then came the whispers. Low and deliberate. Like someone trying to speak through a mouth full of water. They didn't come from a direction I could track. Just around me. In the space. Sometimes when I was brushing my teeth, I'd see movement in the mirror, but only when I wasn't looking directly at it. Something just at the edge of reflection. Too fast to catch. It got to the point where I stopped using mirrors altogether. Covered them with towels. And still, every time I closed my eyes I saw him. Not in dreams anymore. Just burned into my vision. Behind the lids. That slack face. Those clouded eyes. And that smile, wide and knowing, stitched at the corners like it wasn't supposed to fit on a human face. He didn't move. He just watched. I went to a priest. Yeah, I know how that sounds, but when you're this deep in the dark, you start grabbing for anything that might have a little light left in it. Father Morales. Kind man. Didn't laugh. Didn't look at me like I was crazy. Just sat me down in his office, listened. When I finished, he stood and pulled something out of his drawer. It wasn't a crucifix or a Bible. It was a small wooden box, maybe the size of a cigar case, wrapped in leather cord. This belonged to a woman I counseled 15 years ago, he said. She was having similar experiences. She came back from a trip to northern Louisiana. Said she saw something near a river. Her story sounded a lot like yours. What happened to her? He didn't answer. Just handed me the box. Inside was a chunk of pale, preserved meat. Smooth. Hardened. Almost like wax. She called it the tithe, he said. Said she stole it from the thing she saw. Claimed it kept him away. My hands started shaking. I told him about the tin Henry gave me. How he said it was a piece of the first one. Father Morales just nodded. Then it knows you've taken something from it, he said. I left the church that day with the box in my pocket, but no peace. Only more questions. And that night, I found wet footprints on my bedroom ceiling. I didn't know it could climb. The footprints were small, bare, spaced in unnatural ways, like the thing that made them didn't walk the way people do. More like, it draped itself across the ceiling. Hugged it. Moved slow. There were no splatters. No chaos. Just clean, wet prints leading from one corner of the room to the other. And I hadn't heard a damn thing. I stared at them for an hour before I could move. Just stood there in the hallway, hands still on the light switch, eyes refusing to blink. Eventually, I got a chair and climbed up. Reached out and touched one of the prints. Still damp. That broke something in me. I grabbed the tin Henry gave me, the box from the priest, my coat, my keys. I didn't even put shoes on. I just ran. Out the door, into the street, barefoot and shaking. I drove. Didn't know where at first. Just away. The city faded. Then the towns. And then it was just back roads and open sky. I didn't stop until I realized where I was going. Back to the river. Part of me hated myself for it. But I think deep down I knew I wasn't escaping this. Not by running. It wasn't a thing that followed you, not exactly. It was a thing you carried once it saw you. Like a disease. I reached the river just before dawn. Pulled the truck up beside what was left of the bait shop. Nothing but blackened boards and ash, the smell of char still clinging to the earth. But the river was alive. The water churned, dark and sluggish, like something was just beneath the surface. Like it knew I was there. I got out and stood at the edge, both boxes in my hand. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I needed answers. "What do you want?" I shouted. No response. Just the sound of water. So I opened the tin. The moment the lid came off, the air shifted. Everything got quiet. No wind. No birds. The water itself seemed to pause. Inside was a curled, dried thing, gray, like jerky, but shaped wrong. Like a twisted knuckle. It hummed in my hand. And then I heard it. Not with my ears, but from inside my head. "Return what was taken." The voice was thick. Slippery. Like it had moss on its teeth. And it didn't sound angry. It sounded hungry. I dropped the piece back into the tin and slammed it shut. My ears started bleeding. Nose too. I don't remember falling, but I remember the dirt in my mouth when I woke up. There were handprints all around me in the mud. But none of them were mine. I didn't go back to the truck right away. I couldn't. My legs didn't work the way they used to, not after hearing that voice inside my head. Not after waking up in a ring of handprints. My whole body felt like it had been wrung out and left in the cold. There was a pressure in my skull, like someone had stuffed river silt behind my eyes. But something else had changed, too. I wasn't scared the same way. Not like before. The fear was still there, sure, but now it was familiar. Like an old injury you stop noticing until the rain hits it. And I knew that going back wouldn't help. The apartment. The city. Civilization. It didn't matter anymore. I'd been touched. Marked. And whatever I was carrying, it didn't want to be far from the river. So I did the only thing that made sense in that twisted, sleepless logic. I followed the bank upstream. No flashlight. No phone. Just the boxes in my coat pockets, and the sense that something was waiting. The woods grew thicker fast. Branches like ribs overhead, brush clawing at my legs. The air got heavy again, like it always did out here. Wet. Full of rot. But under that, something else. Cooking meat. I knew that smell too well. Not just meat. Human meat. It had that sick sweet bite to it. Like pork left too long in the sun. And then I saw the smoke. It rose in thin gray strands just above the treetops, straight as a signal. I crept toward it, heart pounding. Every twig underfoot sounded like a gunshot. Then I saw the cabin. Old. Half sunken into the earth, like it was trying to crawl away from the world. The roof was sagging. Door hanging off one hinge. Windows boarded up from the inside. And nailed to the frame, right above the doorway, was a face. Just a face. No skull. Just skin. Hollowed and stretched and nailed in the corners like a trophy. I should have turned back. I should have. But I stepped inside. It was dark. Dust choked the air. The floor was covered in bones, cleaned, sorted, stacked in patterns I didn't understand. And in the center of the room, crouched over a fire pit, was him. Closer now. Real. His back was to me, but I could see the skin cape, the way it shimmered like it was alive. His arms were long, too long, and his hands moved slow and methodical as he turned something on a spit. Something with a foot. I should have run. But I just stood there. Watching. And then, without turning, he spoke. "You've come to feed." I didn't answer him. I couldn't. My mouth was dry, my throat locked tight like it had grown thorns. He just kept turning the spit, humming something under his breath, low, droning, almost melodic. Like an old lullaby sung through swamp water. The meat crackled. The fire hissed. And I realized he wasn't cooking it for himself. There was a second place by the fire. A seat. Something like a chair, but lower, made of twisted branches and bones, lashed together with what looked like sinew. The space had been prepared. For me. That's when he finally turned. His face was wrong in 100 little ways. Too long. Lips split wide like old stitches come loose. Eyes cloudy but focused. And his chest. Jesus. His chest looked like it had been opened and sewn back up over and over again. You could see the patchwork scars spidering out from beneath the skin cape. And then he smiled. "Your blood hums like mine used to," he said. "That's how I know you're ready." I backed up, hand shaking as I reached into my coat and pulled out the tin. Opened it. Held it between us like it might burn him. For a moment he paused. His nostrils flared. The smile faltered. But then, he laughed. The sound shook the walls. Rattled my spine. It was like hearing the river laugh through a dead man's lungs. "You think holding the hunger means you understand it?" he said. "No, boy. That piece, it ain't protection." He stepped toward me, barefoot on the bones. "It's a key." I didn't understand. Not then. Not fully. But he kept talking, each word sticking in the air like oil. "You took from the current. Now the current takes from you. That's the rule. That's always been the rule." He reached into the fire with bare hands, pulled the meat off the spit like it was nothing, and held it out. "Eat," he said. I shook my head. Started backing toward the door. But he was already there. Between me and the way out. "You already have," he whispered. And in that moment I remembered something buried, something I'd tasted back at the shop weeks ago. Jerky. Henry had given me some when I first got there. Said it was venison. Only now I knew. That flavor. That smell. It had never been deer. I felt to my knees, retching. My stomach twisted into knots. But nothing came up. Because it was already part of me. And he watched. Smiling. "You're almost ready," he said. I don't remember leaving the cabin. Maybe I blacked out. Maybe I wasn't supposed to remember. All I know is I came to in the dirt, face down in the mud, the sound of rushing water pounding in my ears. The river. I was lying right at the edge of it. My hand was in the water, and it felt warm, too warm. Almost like blood. I sat up slow, body stiff, sore in places I didn't understand. There were scratches on my arms, deep ones. My nails were caked with something dark. The tin was gone. So was the box from the priest. All I had left were the clothes on my back, and the hunger. That's the part that's hardest to explain. It started small, this little tug in my stomach. A pressure. I thought it was nausea at first. Then maybe thirst. But water didn't help. Food didn't help. I kept smelling things. Meat. Rot. Heat rising off skin. And worst of all, I liked it. I stumbled back toward the road, not even sure where I was anymore. My phone was dead. My head throbbed with static. I walked for what felt like hours, maybe longer, until headlights finally found me. A ranger. He said. I looked half dead. I believe him. They took me to a clinic upstate, patched me up, ran tests. Asked where I'd been, what I was doing out in the woods alone. I didn't have answers that made sense, so I gave them the ones that did. Hiking. Got lost. Dehydrated. They bought it, mostly. Sent me home with antibiotics and pamphlets about staying safe in the wilderness. But they couldn't fix what changed. I stopped dreaming. No nightmares. No memories. Just black. And when I woke up, that hunger was still there. I started going out at night. Walking the alleys. Hanging around dumpsters behind restaurants. I'd catch myself sniffing, like an animal, chasing that same scent from the woods. That smoke and meat smell. And then one night, I found a raccoon. Hit by a car. Still warm. I don't want to tell you what I did. But I will. I knelt down. Looked around. And I ate it. Raw. I didn't even feel disgust. Not until the morning. Not until I washed the blood from my hands and saw something in the mirror that didn't look like me anymore. My eyes had gone cloudy. Just like his. It's been 3 months since I came back. I don't work. I don't see people. Most days I don't even speak. Not because I can't, but because I'm afraid of what might come out. The hunger never leaves. I tried locking myself in. Bolting the doors. Taping the windows. Sleeping during the day, walking at night when no one's around. I thought maybe I could starve it out. But it's not in my stomach anymore. It's in my blood. It whispers. When I pass people on the street, I don't see faces, I see cuts. Muscle. Tendons. Places to carve. And sometimes, when I'm walking past the river, and I always end up back at the river, I swear I see him. Not up close. Never up close. Just across the water, through the trees. Watching. He doesn't come closer. He doesn't have to. Because I'm him now. Or maybe the next one. The next keeper. The one who waits upstream. I think that's how it works. I think there's always one. Someone to feed the river. Someone to make the offerings. Someone to carry the key. Uncle Henry knew. He wasn't warning me to stay away. He was preparing me. Passing it on. The hunger. The curse. Last night, I dreamed I was skinning something. I couldn't see what. Just felt the blade. The warmth. The peeling. When I woke up, my hands were stained red. No cuts. No pain. But there was a tooth under my pillow. Clean. Polished. Human. And I knew, deep in that new part of me, the part that doesn't belong to me anymore, that the river had accepted me. That I'm ready now. So I'm writing this down. Not to warn you. Not really. Just to tell you one thing. If you ever see him, don't run. He'll follow. Don't fight. He'll win. And for the love of everything you've ever loved, don't eat the jerky.